So, good evening. Tonight is the first part of the untold stories of the Prinz Albrecht Palais in Berlin. And this here is the original building as it was built in 1737. And I am working with another book where we're actually getting this from. This is this here. Let me see if I can bring this in. That is reading here Schriften des Vereins für die Geschichte der Stadt Berlin. Erster Band. And they have a book in here, which is this here, or a publication. That is the booklet number 3, Das Palais seiner Königlichen Hoheit des Prinzen Albrecht von Preußen. Von Schneider, Geheimer Hofrat. He wrote this in 1870, and everything in this book here was once in the city archives where they got this from. And a lot of this material, Schneider references in here, is no longer available because it got destroyed during World War II. And so these are the only references we have. This was if you translate this, that was basically the Society for the History of the City of Berlin. And they had like quarterly publications, magazines or booklets they would print. And this is a collection which they then printed in book form. And this is, if I read this correctly, yeah, this is the erste Band. That's the first volume of these booklets. So this is the reference material, the reference source we're working with to bring this all into perspective. Now, in order to understand this, we're going to break this down into two parts. And what you're going to see here in this video tonight is something which has never been really published like this at all. I have the original architectural drawings here for the Palais as it was built by the French nobleman, Baron von Vernezobre, I think. I do not know exactly on how to spell his last name, but we will get there eventually too. But we're going to start, first of all, let me show you today's Berlin. All of this here is the city of Berlin. And this entire thing here basically is going to play out here right in the center, where we're going to get to here in a second, and we will see this. So this here was actually the original town or village of Berlin, and this here was the new Cologne, Neukölln, what they called this. And in 1650, I believe, we're going to go to this map, it looked like this here. It was just Köln, Cologne, what they called this. And you will see this is actually what they did is they had the east side facing up. Today this is north on the map. So you have east, west, north, and south. And we actually have to rotate these old maps. And it would look like this here. And now you can see what this was Cologne. And this was the original city castle they built. And the cathedral was across here. And that was the park for the castle, where the Margraves of Brandenburg at that point were basically residing. And let me see if I can minimize this, move this over, and then we can see this here when we zoom in a little bit more. Whoops. We can see this here now. You can see the River Spree going through here. And this part here is New Cologne, or Cologne now. And this is Berlin. This was just Berlin. And that was just basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 streets basically this way, and 1, 2, 3, 4 streets basically that way, and it was surrounded by a wall. That wall, if we look at this here very carefully, we probably, I have to probably reduce this here in size too, in order to get this all scaled so we can actually compare this. Yeah, now we can, without having these windows close all the time on us. And I got the laptop fixed. So basically here, this is the museum, and this here is the new museum. And where did they rebuild the Berliner Dom? Here. Museumsinsel, Schlossbrücke. This was the city castle here, I believe. That it is the city castle which they rebuilt just recently. And you can see on how much this all has changed. It is somewhat difficult to actually figure this exactly out. Yeah, this is here, the city castle. This park here is now divided by a street which wasn't there. And you kind of can see this here going around here. And what we have here now is the museums, more museums, and another museum, and another museum. And so the Humboldt Forum is actually the reconstructed city castle. You can see this here by the roof they have on here. And they only did the facade on this thing, if I understood that correctly. And I think from here we should be able to see this, if it lets us, unless Google hasn't updated this yet. Yeah, this is the rebuilt city castle, which was there, and they did only the facade. All the interior is new on this. So that's what this kind of looks like today, just that you have an idea of where we are. So only this part here was actually Berlin. This is the original city of Berlin. And this here, that little island here, was Cologne. And past this here, I would say this is 1, 2, 3, 4 streets out. So you have 1, 2, 3, I would say before Alexanderplatz here on this line here where the S-Bahn goes. This is where the old city wall was at one point. And everything past here to the east, northeast, and southeast was all countryside. Fields, meadows, sheep herding, that kind of stuff, directly outside the city. And then from here, we go basically from the castle. We have Unter den Linden. There's the big street, which goes to the Pariser Platz and to the Brandenburg Gate. And I guess most people are familiar with the Brandenburg Gate. And let me see where we can see this. That is not yet in this city plan in here. You can see this here. We had only a small bridge by the castle, which is here, which went then into the Linden. This is the Unter den Linden starts here, basically, and this was the small bridge, and now it's a big bridge. So this was the city of Berlin in its size in 1652. Just these two parts. And we're going to look a little bit more at the maps because this will make then more sense. Let's go on to the next map. And let me see. We're going to want to go to a time of when they were planning on, according to this book. I'm going to explain this here. And this is going to be something the anti-monarchists have to take with a a grain of salt. Maps. This is the city map here from 1723, and we can see now it had gone past the city wall here on the south side. Now again, this map is upside down, so we have to rotate it because this is actually the proper alignment. This up here is the northern direction, east, west, and south basically. And here we're looking at, let me just see this, of course this is now all written upside down. We can see here the little island, the city castle is right here, and we can see here that bridge, that small bridge, and here we go unter den Linden, and this here was the Brandenburg Gate, which went into the Tiergarten, which is the animal park, and you can see there was nothing basically still but fields around it. And then we had some houses and buildings here which had developed on the west side of it, south of the Brandenburg Gate, and they had built another wall here, and that street here was called Mauerstraße, Wall Street basically if you translate it. And now in 1723 the king basically told his populace there, how would you say this? They were not servants, nor were there serfs or anything like this, his citizens of the city, that he would supply the land and the building materials for free if they're going to put in the labor, and he wanted to develop all of this area here, south or to the west of it. Just to give you an idea on how far spread out this actually is in relationship to, now I have to see here, 1768, just that you have a idea. This here is Berlin. In the middle here you had Cologne, and then it spread out here to this part by 1768 already. At that point they had built already the Palais, and this was Charlottenburg, where the Charlottenburg Castle is. This is Spandau. Today all of this is one. Then you have Rixdorf down here, Lichtenberg, Weißensee, Hohenschönhausen, Marzahn, and these were all streets basically where you have these roads here, and no railroad of course. Then you have Tegel, Reinickendorf, Rosenthal, and that's basically it. And this was all wooded area and all agricultural land and predominantly sheep herding. That's basically what that looks like it. And today, again, this whole thing is basically here. You can see Tegel up here, Reinickendorf. You can see Lichtenberg here, Marzahn. All of this is built out. And of course down here in this direction and all the other direction. The area of interest to us, of course, here is south of the Brandenburg Gate. And we will see this here. And we can still see the Mauerstraße. So this is where the original wall went, and then they developed all of this stuff from 1723 on, including the area here where we're going to see the Prinz Albrecht Palais. So from here to here, I would say that's probably a mile or less than a mile from here to the Brandenburg Gate. So this is where the Palais was first built, here, right in this area here. And this was also the time the Kochstraße, which is now Rudi-Dutschke-Straße, was built. And the Niederkirchnerstraße was die Zimmerstraße. That is still the same. They didn't change that. Let me show you here in our newest city map. Let me just see. Let me close this out. You have to bear with me here. This is all not that easy, but you can see this better when we're zooming in here. I'm going to go now to the map from 1811. In the other map, we can see this already. Some maps are very large scans, which I got. You can see this. This is one of the larger ones, and they take a second here to load up. Yeah, Mauerstraße here. So let me close this one out. The smaller maps work somewhat better. It doesn't seem to like this map. Let me see here. It was 1778. I think here we can see the whole Berlin situation again. And again, this is this area here for which was developed. And now the king gave the property basically and the so the 1811 map doesn't want to go the way we want to go. All right, then let's go to the map from 4640. Go to the map from 1835. Here we can. This one seems to be working better. The 1811, it doesn't like it for whatever reason. So now here we can see this a lot better. So here again, just to give you the oversight in it, this is the map here. So now we can see this, the Pariser Platz, the Paris Plaza was already now developed. You have the Brandenburg Gate here, right here. And then we have now the Wilhelmstraße here and the Mauerstraße here. And then we have the Prinz August Palais here. The Wilhelms Platz was before the Wilhelms Market, where they actually had a market that became a plaza, Platz. And then we had Prinz Friedrich had his palais here. And then you had the Ministry for Justice was here. Then you had Count Radziwill was here. And then we had, this is the Geld, and this was the minting. The mint was there. And then you had the Dreifaltigkeitskirche here, just to give you an idea. And here was the Prinz Albrecht Palais now, before it became the Prinz Albrecht Palais. Actually, at this point, it was already, and the construction was completed. And we can see that the Zimmerstraße actually ended here in the Wilhelmstraße, and so did the Kochstraße. Now, this book tells us that Koch, this guy here, was the mayor. The Wikipedia people tell us a different story. So I don't know if Koch was they're saying Koch was the mayor of Berlin, of this entire city here, what you're seeing here. But it could be possible that he was only the mayor of this newer part of it. That's what the documents or the information reflects on Wikipedia. That is conflicting, like I said. So the Kochstraße, like I had explained before, ended here, and our friend Hauptner, Ferdinand Hauptner, lived here. This is 94, 95, 96. This was his house with his garden or backyard. And you can see this was a pretty considerable house. These were all two-story buildings which were built. First floor or ground floor, and then a second floor. And all these buildings here, what you're seeing here, all of them which have the backyards and these properties associated with it, all the way down here, all of this here was agricultural gardening stuff. And all of this building material was given to the people for free. So Ferdinand Hauptner's grandfather was the one in 1730 when this started, who got this parcel here assigned, 96, which no longer exists today. Because if we're looking at this, we will see that the Zimmerstraße is going to go straight through and is today the Niederkirchnerstraße. That is right here. And his property would have been right here on this corner, basically. Zimmerstraße, Niederkirchnerstraße. And this is basically the area here where the hotel, the Four Seasons, which changed its name then to Prinz Albrecht Hotel, was basically then built around 1880 to 1890. So by the time in the early 19th century, so 1830, 1840, 50, 60, 70, none of this existed. The Gropius Palais or building wasn't there. The hotel wasn't there. Any of the stuff what they had built later on. And these were all small two-story buildings. And then they came with I almost said with the bulldozers in 1880. That's basically when that changed. In 1835 or 1830, when my third great-grandfather basically bought this building, he converted it, or he did remodeling and that sort of stuff to it. And we will take a look at this. But from anything, this is today the topography of Terror. This whole area, especially from here to here, from Kochstraße to here, this area here is the center for the Holocaust, the topography of Terror. That's what they're calling this. This is this area here. And I think this here was the Gropius building. And that's basically it. In the Palais, you actually can see this here. We go a little bit further over. Ended here. The Palais was right one block to here. So basically where this is, that was from here to here, was actually the entrance of the Palais. And the hotel was here. We will see this with the leftovers. So, and this has turned, this entire block was turned over into the Topographie des Terrors. Topography of the Terror. Dokumentationszentrum. That's basically, it's a memorial now. But this is how this all changed. And you can see this here again. The Zimmerstraße ended here originally and was then extended around 1880. Now let's look a little bit here. And of course, just to remind you, the Hauptnuss, there's two things I actually wanted to say to this. Is, for one is, in the old maps, when you deal until World War II, all of the streets in Berlin originated on one end of the street, and then the numbers went up. Let me see if I can show you this fairly well here. So they started here, 72. So Wilhelmstraße, 71, 72, 70. And across the street, you got now 68, counting down. So that is how this worked. So you didn't have one side odd and the other side even, starting at one side 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5, and so far and so on. They had them numbered through. So if you're ever going to do any searching for properties, you have to remember this, that all the cities in Berlin before World War II were numbered this way. So if you're looking at a building number 5, it is in a different position than what it today in that street than what it was back then before World War II. And we know that Hauptner lived in 96, so this was Hauptner's house. He was our chef. And because of the extension of Zimmerstraße, which then became the Prinz Albrecht Straße and is now the Niederkirchnerstraße, that basically his house fell victim to the updating of the city. So that building is no longer there. I mean, there's none of these buildings have survived. Even the buildings which were then built in the 1880s are basically gone today. And I don't think that this has been explained anywhere. This is basically just the basic stuff to understand of what you're looking at in Berlin when you're looking at the topography of terror. For one, this is this area here, and you can see there was nothing at the time until the Nazis moved in there, which had anything remotely to do with any kind of Holocaust-related activities, being extremist or what have you. And neither did the Palais, for that matter. Now let's take a look at the actual building itself. So we have here, I think I showed this in the beginning. This was the building by the time what it looked like it in 1830 when my third great-grandfather bought it. Before that, it was Amalie, which was the youngest sister of Frederick the Great, she had bought this actually from the heirs of the French noblemen, who their children sold it to another guy, and then it was sold again, and then it wound up with Amalie. So, this is basically here a picture of what this looked like. So this, at the later point, this was in around, I would say, 1910, probably, 1909, 1910. This is the entrance. So Kochstraße is right here on this angle. And this would be 102. This would be 101, 199, and then 98 was the corner. And over here, 97 and 96 would have been the second building. And you can see that is no longer, it was already in 1880, it was gone. Hauptneshaus. And let me just see, this is basically a newer picture that was around 1900 when this picture was taken. And we can see this was the modified entrance from the original one. And this is what that looked like it when it belonged to Princess Amalie. And this is how the French noblemen actually had built it. And this is an actual picture from 1909. And we can see here is that the second floor here, we had a roof area over here and over here. That was enclosed. And my third great-grandfather had put an extension on the building on this side of it. And I believe this is the east wing, if I'm not mistaken. This is basically what it looked like it after he converted it. Yeah, you can see this. This was an open terrace, basically, and the building stopped here. And this was offices and other accommodations for the people who were part of the French barons' entourage, so to speak. And now let's go to the actual drawings here. Here is now the drawings we want to look at. And here we can see the building to Kochstraße, the way it actually folded out. And this is the original park he had designed here with a building here. And I guess this was their vegetable garden. This was the staples in these two buildings with the terraces on there. And that was the main building. Now, these are the original architectural drawings, and the good man was Vernezobre, Baron de Vernezobre. Plan des souterrains des hôtels de Monsieur le Conseiller Privé Baron de Vernezobre. I apologize to any French-speaking viewer. And we can see here that the plans were made in German and in French. This in French and in German. And this is basically the basement. And this was like 2/3 underground and about 1/3 above ground. And he had two kitchens, as you can see. Then this was the storage for coal they used. the staircases going down here, and these are just cellars basically for storage. They have more storage area here, and then they have a room basically, a Stube, Kammer, a chamber, and this is basically where they did their laundry and that sort of stuff here. This is most likely the big fireplace with the fire oven here with the stove next to it. And this place here, this kitchen here, did not have a fireplace like this here. So this is where the main kitchen activity would have happened, basically, where the main cooking would have happened. And then we have the second or the first floor. That's basically the ground level. This was the saloon or the Saal, the grand salon, basically. And then you had the sleeping quarters here, sleeping bedroom, and that sort of stuff. You have the, well, you can see this here, the closets and so far and so on. And then we go to the first floor. Yeah, this is now the first floor. Yeah. My Guff chamber, grand cabinet, grand gallery. So they have one sleeping room here and a lot of the dressing rooms and that sort of stuff which was associated with it. Looks very French. And then this is the second floor. And this is now where we had a lot more bedrooms, all the chambers and Kammer chamber. So this is where most likely all the servants lived at the time from the Baron. And this gives you a overall view on what this actually looked like, it with chimneys and all of this stuff. With the floors, you have the ground level or the basement basically on how this was in there and that sort of stuff. And this is the actual view here, and we can see here, this is the basement windows, so you can say it was at least 2/3 was underground, 1/3 was above ground. The first and the second floor had tall ceilings. Third floor, the servants' quarters, had small floors, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 chimneys on top of it. So we can go back now and see, since we have the chimney locations, to see if they have actually, yeah, you can see them here. This is all these cavities here is for supplies, and that was most likely chimney related, basically. This is these squares, what you have in these drawings is usually chimney. Since they didn't have a water pipe system, plumbing system in place yet, you just see on how this comes out of the basement. Yeah, we can see this. Then this is the chimney here, and this is the chimney here, and then they worked them way up into the first floor, and they're being routed here and here in these areas here. This is the chimney going up. So these were fireplaces down here, both of them. This area here was the exhaust system, basically. So you have two kitchen or stoves, basically, fireplace and stove here, and then it went up. Then they have something here, but this is not enclosed. It is only when they're enclosed that you actually have a chimney, as you can imagine. And what these things did is that heat from the kitchen would be routed through these chimneys here, and that started to heat up the walls. So when you have an old building like this, you have to really look at the plans to see where your chimneys were. And this is essential. This is basically on how these buildings were heated. From the basement up, fireplace, and the rising heat in here would warm up the interior walls, basically here. This wasn't an exact science. And if you don't heat this up if you have the original walls, which you most likely have if you buy a castle or what have you, and you don't heat them from the basement up through these chimneys, then you're going to run into a problem that you probably have some freezing temperatures in the building, or you're just not going to get warm. A central heating system will not work properly because these things here are going to have, if they're not heated, they're going to have a constant cold draft unless you close this all off. And that could pose another problem because that was calculated to be circulating from the basement all the way up for adequate ventilation in the basement, if you have a basement. If you don't have a basement, then that starts out on the ground floor, but it employs the same principle. It was basically a central heating system. This is basically what these two places are. And that's why you got the cold chamber here and over here, and cold chamber. So you have on both sides, immediately close to this here, cold chambers. And that's how they kept, or that's how they started heating up the building, basically. This was the essentials from this thing freezing completely up. And then you have only the fireplaces in the upper floors to provide some additional heat in the, like here, this would be a fireplace. This would be a fireplace here. Fireplace, fireplace, fireplace. And this is channeled inside these walls to meet up with these chimneys. And again, all of this heat collectively then starts to rise up here, which then also warms up these whole building, or the walls to begin with. You have very little insulation or no insulation on the outside, including the windows. But this is roughly on how this worked, so I didn't want to get too far into this. But now you have seen this of what the Palais actually looked like. Now, after it was all said and done, in the 1980s, the mayor, Eberhard Diepgen, was wondering of what he should have done with the area, which is now the topography of the tower. And they started to think about it, what they would do with the Palais, if they were to rebuild it or what they wanted to do. No one knew. This is the drawing comparison between the original building as the Baron built it, and this is the modifications then Schinkel made to the building when my third great-grandfather added it. So you can see this here from the center out. We had only two rooms. That is the original wall here. Then they had that staircase going out. These two, and then there was basically this, just the walls here all the way down to the basement. So all of this here was added to this here, and you can see that this was then fully enclosed now, the way you're seeing it today, or you would be seeing it today. And the gate area was basically here redone to what you saw in the picture, in the photos. Not in the paintings, but in the photographies. That was basically it. And today, and there's a long story behind this too, the red lines and the blue lines are the existing ground walls from the basement, which are still in the ground. Now and this will be part of the next video, is on how the Heydrich and the SS actually got a hold of this building in the first place. And we're going to talk about that. That's why I'm going to have to break this down. But after it was all said and done, and my grandfather negotiated the first, 10 how should I say this, the removal of the remains of the ruins of the palace or of the palais in 4952 in that area. Once that was worked out, the city wound up, the West German, or the West Berlin, the city of West Berlin, wound up with this whole area over there. And they had issued a contract to a construction company in 1959, and the construction company was ordered to remove all of this, what you see here in blue and red, out of the basement area. So they were supposed to have excavated it all the way down to nothing and remove every trace of this building. In 1980, when Eberhard Diepgen was preparing Berlin for the 750-year celebrations, in I think 1987 it was, they issued a competition to architects, and this is from an Italian architect firm. They found out 1979, they started to dig around in that empty lot over there, and they found out that all of these blue and red marked, or blue especially marked, parts of the foundation or of the basement were still there. What the construction company had done is, instead of leveling it all the way and removing the floor of the basement, they only took down an additional meter. So you have about the floor and 1 meter of these walls standing. All of this is basically here, 1 meter tall underground now, about 2 meters underground. And with that, you actually have the exact footprint of the Palais if you ever wanted to rebuild it. You would have to add all of this stuff all the way up, and I don't even want to think about what that would cost. The idea was to rebuild this the way it was before 1933, before the Nazis rented this from us on a 99-year lease, and then make this building available to the Jewish Museum, I think, or to the Jewish Society, the German Jewish Society or something like this. And they would be then sitting next to that Albrechtstraße, Prinz Albrechtstraße, Niederkirchner Straße property, where they have the topography of the terror on it. So this was supposed to be becoming a library, and you can see here faintly the outlines of this, where they would have this area here on the first floor, library space entrance, and you have the stairs, and then you have reading rooms, and then in the upper floors they would have offices and a conference room and that sort of stuff. That was the idea, but that never materialized. And if we go back today, I show you what this actually looks like. We have only, so if we go to Kochstraße, let me see here. And with this, we're going to end the video. This is what you're seeing today. When you come out of Kochstraße, you can see here the last building part would have been here. All of this here is topography of the terror on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, this is where the Prinz Albrecht Palais once stood, right here. And that is basically now a park, but they integrated it with a fence into the topography of the terror. I guess you could rebuild the Palais if there was ever a desire for this to be done. You can see here the memorial part of this, and I guess they have a walkway around it, and you can see this is all fenced off here. And that's kind of where that is at. So the Palais actually was still here, and then there were other buildings down here too, which did not belong to us. But this could be done. For us, of course, it would have been very difficult to do anything with this property because of the historic proportion of what actually has happened there. But we're going to go into that part in the second video I'm going to make in part 2. For tonight, I'm going to leave it by this, and I hope that video was helpful to you and I didn't forget too many things. and you have experienced something new and learned something, hopefully. And with that, you have a great evening.